Questions without notice. Are there any questions? The Honourable Deputy Leader of the National Party.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. In the light of the decision in Abu Dhabi today, the third country now to reject Australian live sheep, will the Prime Minister now assume personal control of this important export trade issue and conduct negotiations with his counterpart in Saudi Arabia?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I accept that there is properly on both sides of the parliament a real concern about the issue, which is the subject of the honourable gentleman's question. Let me say, as I'm sure the honourable gentleman appreciates, that the government is concerned to protect Australia's reputation as a live sheep exporter, and it has moved quickly to address the Saudi allegations of disease. And as you know, we sent a high-level delegation to investigate their claims. Well, just wait a minute, will you, for once in your life, instead of being stupid. The Saudi officials, Mr Speaker—
Order. 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 The Honourable Prime Minister.
When you're faced with it, you've got to identify it, and this is just being stupid. Now, just listen to the answer, and presumably you'll accept it. Now, Mr Speaker, the Saudi officials acknowledge, Mr Speaker, the Saudi officials acknowledge that the diseases did not originate in Australia, but they are refusing, as I hope the honourable gentleman knows, they acknowledge they didn't originate here, but they are refusing to provide Australia the test details or results. Just refuse to provide the details. And obviously we have yet to be convinced in this situation that a serious disease problem exists. All rejected shipments, Mr Speaker, have been accepted and they have been cleared of disease by other Middle East markets. Well, that is the case. Kuwait in particular has rigorously tested rejected sheep and it has declared them free of the alleged diseases. And Qatar's positive disease tests were subsequently overturned, and we have yet to confirm the United Arab Emirates disease findings. We're looking, Mr Speaker, at further measures to satisfy Saudi animal health concerns and a mechanism to deal with future problems should they arise. In the interim, Mr Speaker, we support the Australian Meat and Livestock Corporation action to protect Australia's interests by temporarily suspending further shipments to Saudi Arabia. I repeat, Mr Speaker, that this matter has been handled very efficiently and with complete commitment. The Minister has had the cooperation of those with whom he's dealt, and we are not in possession of any evidence whatsoever to suggest, no evidence at all, to suggest that there is any basis in terms of Australia's position to justify the action taken by the Saudis. There may be some explanation in terms of internal Saudi considerations. Neither my government nor our great pastoral industry, our great sheep industry, can be held responsible for what may be happening within Saudi to explain what has happened. There is no responsibility on the part of Australia's great primary industry, nor is there any responsibility on the part of the Australian government. And it is a tragedy, Mr Speaker, that is on just about every issue that arises, whether it's the pay claims of avaricious pilots or in regard to a situation like this where Australian farmers have acted honourably, properly, without the possibility of any suggestion being made against them that they have acted otherwise than properly and safely, where the government is giving them all the support they possibly can, where there is no evidence at all. Again, it's just another example of this pathetic opposition, Mr Speaker, who regard, Mr Speaker, as the last item on their agenda of interest, the real interests of Australia. It's about time they woke up that the people of Australia are getting sick and tired of a situation where they put their miserable selves first and their country last.
Point of order, the Honourable Deputy Leader of the National Party.
There's no disagreement with the Prime Minister's description of the live sheep problem. But the question was, will the Prime Minister now become involved because so far everything else has failed?
I warn the Deputy Leader of the National Party. The Honourable Member for Hindmarsh.
Mr. Speaker, may I first of all congratulate you in the recent election to the high office of Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to address a question to the Minister for Industrial Relations. Yesterday, the honourable member for Mayo asked the Prime Minister a question on an alleged agreement between the REM Construction Company and the Australian Building and Construction Workers Federation, with a claim that there had been a 30% wage deal on the Myer redevelopment site. Does such a deal exist?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. Just carrying on from the Prime Minister's remarks, what we saw in that question yesterday was another attempt by the opposition to do anything to damage this country just to gain sheer political opportunism for itself. They are the facts, because that statement by the honourable member for Mayo at the weekend and yesterday's question were clearly designed to give comfort, support and encouragement to the Australian Federation of Air Pilots in the damage that they are wreaking upon the economy of this nation.
Order. The honourable member for O'Connor with a point of order. The honourable member for O'Connor.
On the matter of relevance, Mr. Speaker, the question was simply whether or not an agreement was made. The minister can answer it yes or no, and let's get on with the important business of this place.
There is no point of order. The member for O'Connor will resume his seat, and I'll remind him of Standing Order 55. The honourable minister. I warn the honourable member for O'Connor.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, the statement by the honourable member for Mayo and the question asked yesterday were clearly designed to give support to the Federation of Air Pilots. We have the hypocrisy of the opposition raising day by day attacks upon the government for the damage being done by the Federation of Air Pilots, and at the same time encouraging that damage. That's really what the opposition's about. Now, I think the opposition would be better served if the honourable member for Mayo got his brain into gear before he opened his mouth, because on this issue, like on so many other issues that he raises, he is wrong. And don't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker, not my word for it, but just let's see what the company concerned has to say about it. See what they've got to say about it, Mr. Speaker. Here is their response to the honourable member for Mayo. Not the government's response, but the company's member. Mr. Prime Minister, you might like to hold that. And may I, Mr. Speaker, may I, for the information of honourable members, read to the House, what the company has to say in its full-page advertisement today in the Adelaide Advertiser. And it reads this: "You're wrong, Mr. Downer. You're wrong, Mr. Downer."
Order.
On Sunday, August 27, the federal Liberal member for Mayo, Mr Alexander Downer, made allegations about wages paid to workers on the Myer redevelopment site in Rundle Mall. Mr Downer's claims were poorly researched and, in most cases, totally erroneous. We wish to set the record straight on behalf of all workers in the site, particularly members of the Builders Labourers Federation, properly known as the Australian Building and Construction Workers Federation, who were singled out. Mr Downer claimed that the BLF had obtained a backdoor wage increase of 30% over and above award payments in the building industry. This is wrong. All workers' wage rates are strictly in accordance with appropriate state or federal industrial awards and industry agreements, which make provision for certain allowances, including site allowances.
The member for Mayo.
Like, you mightn't like it, but you're going to cop it. You mightn't like it, but you're going to cop it.
The minister will continue to answer the question and not answer the interjection. It is
standard practice in the building industry to negotiate site allowances for projects. When work began in September-October last year, an industrial agreement was signed by REM Construction Australia Proprietary Limited and the 8 unions involved in the redevelopment. This agreement provided for extended working hours and included site allowances of up to $3 an hour allowable within the awards.
The member for Mayo will cease interjecting. The member for Mayo, if he continues to interject, if the member for Mayo continues to defy the chair, I'll deal with him. The honourable minister.
No workers employed on the Myer site have received or even demanded any increase in wages or allowances outside this agreement. No backdoor payments have been or will be paid on this site. Mr Downer was right in suggesting that construction workers can earn high weekly wages while employed in this site. Work is available 7 days a week on a 2-shift basis. These workers work hard for their money in the interest of productivity. Mr Downer, you should have no argument with that. And the signature, Mr Speaker, the sponsor of the advertisement is REM Construction Australia Proprietary Limited. And might I say in conclusion, Mr Speaker, that from the government's point of view, the opposition and the honourable member need to note labourers are covered by state jurisdiction, the tradesmen are under federal jurisdiction. As yet, the agreements have not been ratified by either the state or federal industrial relations commissions, which is the proper place for examination of these issues. And what the people of Australia need to understand is that the damage being done to the tourism and travel industries in this country by the Federation of Air Pilots is being supported, encouraged and condoned by those who now said opposite.
The honourable member for Fadden.
Mr Speaker, my question is directed to the Prime Minister. I refer to the government's decision to intervene in the negotiations between Qantas and its pilots for productivity increases for the new Boeing 747-400 series aircraft. Is it a fact that those negotiations began more than 2 years ago and were conducted under the normal productivity guidelines applicable to aircraft type, which have already resulted in pay reductions as well as increases at Qantas? Did the interim agreement have the full support of the Qantas board, including Simon Crean? Will the Prime Minister admit his intervention at the instigation of Ansett was unnecessary and stupid?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, let's deal with the latter part of the question, the insinuation first, that I intervened on this matter at the instigation of Ansett. Mr Speaker, I don't know what's come over a gentleman who I had previously thought had a mixture of intelligence and decency. It's an absolute... well, you can shrug yourself and say and try and shrug it off. The fact is that what you are trying to say is that the Prime Minister of Australia acted on the basis, presumably, of a friendship that he has with the head of Ansett. OK, good. OK, well, let's have it out in the open. The fact is that on this matter, in the presence of my colleagues, the other ministers, the head of Ansett, Sir Peter Abels, and the head of Australian Airlines met me in my office. Not me myself, but with my ministers there. And the question that was raised jointly, not just by Ansett, but by Australian Airlines. Why don't we have at least a modicum of decency in your question and say, did I act in response to pressure from Australian Airlines and Ansett? Because, unfortunately, you wouldn't do that because that's the whole truth of who was there. The whole truth of who was there. The whole truth of who was there. Don't try and jump up in your muddled little way and say the whole truth about the issue. I'm saying the whole truth of who was there. But no, you couldn't do that. You couldn't ask the question whether it was pressure from the airlines. It had to be.
Order.
It had to be, was it pressure from Ansett? Well, why don't you at least have the decency to say, well, did the airlines? Now, the airlines did raise the question. The airlines, not just Ansett and Australian Airlines, Ted Harris and Abels, representing their airlines, raised the question, and legitimately. And what was the question they raised? A very simple one, that there were existing agreements within the Australian airline industry covering the domestic airlines and Qantas International, under which agreements there was an understanding, an agreement, that no one would handle this question of recrewing, remanning arrangements and attendant possible changes in salaries unless and until any one of them concerned, confronted with a claim on this, had consulted with the others. Now, that was the existing agreements that they had, and Australian and Ansett, naturally enough, being confronted with demands from their pilots, were saying that they were very concerned that something could have been done in defiance of an agreement which could push them into a situation where they may be forced, under industrial pressure, to pay increases to their pilots, which was outside of anything that was reasonable. So the answer is yes. The two domestic airlines very properly raised with the Prime Minister of this country and the two of my ministers concerned, the Minister for Transport and Communications and the Minister for Industrial Relations, yes, they did raise and properly raised this issue with me, and I properly took it aboard. Now, Mr Speaker, let's get the facts straight for this very confused member and an increasingly discredited opposition. I'm informed, Mr Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition had a press conference before the Parliament resumed this afternoon to explain or attempt to explain his position on this issue to the press gallery. And the universal judgment was that he didn't know what he was talking about. It was bewildering. Now, not surprising, because that's what we've witnessed in this House. Now, Mr Speaker,
Order.
Let's get clear what the facts are. The new Qantas 747-400 series aircraft provides for 2 crew in the cockpit, a considerable improvement in productivity over earlier generation 747 series. In assessing, Mr Speaker, any increase in work value due to new generation aircraft in the aviation industry, it is clearly this government's wish that an industry approach be adopted, as is required under the existing agreements, and, Mr Speaker, secondly, that such matters be pursued through the Industrial Relations Commission in accordance with wage-fixing principles. Now, Mr Speaker, the Qantas has given the government an assurance that no new allowance has been paid in respect of 747-400 crew, and it has given us the undertaking that any such proposal will be pursued within the Industrial Relations Commission as required. And may I say, Mr Speaker, that it's a measure of the responsibility of the Australian International Pilots Association, AIPA, that they also accept that position. That's the position that they accept, and that they have agreed, Mr Speaker, to pursue the matter within the wage-fixing system. So let me conclude where I began, Mr Speaker. I regard as beneath contempt the insinuation in the question from the honourable member that this was an approach from Ansett because of, my God, it's not a state secret that Sir Peter Abels is a long-standing friend of the Prime Minister. But because of that very poorly kept state secret, there is this insinuation, this miserable insinuation in the question that Sir Peter Abels and Hawke have come to some position. The fact is that Sir Peter Abels on behalf of Ansett and Ted Harris on behalf of Australian Airlines properly came to me and the two ministers and said this is an issue of concern, a real issue of concern which, if allowed to go through into the domestic situation, could wreck the wages system and the Australian economy. And the Australian Prime Minister and his two ministers properly took that issue into account.
The honourable member for McEwen.
Question is to the Minister for Defence.
Order.
Has the Minister seen comments today that the Australian Defence Force personnel returning from exercise Kangaroo 89 are being given second priority to civilian requirements for RAF aircraft? Are RAF crews being required to work unnecessarily long hours during the dispute? Has the government neglected its commitment to review pay and allowances for defence personnel?
The Honourable Minister for Defence.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, because the statements to which he alludes is yet further evidence of what has been persistently revealed here in question time, in questions from opposition front benches and in the way in which they have participated in debate. I have seen those statements in today's papers. They came from those statements made. They came from a press release from Senator Jocelyn Newman, the Shadow Minister for Defence, Science and Personnel. And it is replete with the type of comment that has come from the other side of the House, allegedly supporting the government's position, in fact opposing it. Indeed, she goes along with a theme in which she has long adopted in that area, which is at least half suggestive of the notion that perhaps the services ought to think other than operate under direct government directive. For example, she says, our servicemen and women have no right to speak about their own treatment. It is an ironic state of affairs when one considers that the essential duty of our Defence Force is to defend and protect our democracy and freedom of speech, and yet they are the only Australian body of people denied just that, the freedom of speech. right through that press release is the implicit assumption that the Defence Forces have the right to avoid a direction from the government on this matter or anything else, an extraordinarily dangerous constitutional position. And that would be an interesting matter of debate in itself. But of course, in this particular context, this statement by Senator Newman is produced to provide implicit and explicit criticism of the government's decision to employ the RAAF to fly people in this country in the absence of the capacity of the civilian airlines to fly following the resignation of their pilots. And I might say, in answering those points that you made in your question directly, that I have nothing but praise for the way in which the RAAF has conducted themselves over the last week. They have provided an absolutely essential service. They have done it well, and unlike the comment that is made by Senator Jocelyn Newman here, in which she says you can imagine how they personally feel very good about it indeed. They are providing a service to the people of this country. The people of this country who are using that service are expressing to them as they get off their planes the gratitude that they do feel for the fact that they are able to get to the destinations that they need to get to, and we are getting no complaints from pilots at all about the services that they are performing. So that's the first point that I'd make in response to this continuing opposition effort at subversion of the government's activities to ensure that the travelling public of this country are properly served. The next aspect I would deal with in the honourable gentleman's question relates to the question of priority in return from the Kangaroo 89 series exercises. Now, it would not be unusual in these circumstances in which we find the travelling public massively inconvenienced if the government were, in fact, to assign a higher level of priority to shifting civilian personnel around, civilians around, as opposed to leaving full-time defence personnel in place on an exercise. It would not be unusual if a government in these circumstances were, in fact, to do as suggested we are doing by Senator Jocelyn Newman in her press release. But the fact of the matter is we are not. We are continuing to assign top priority over the other requirements to the return of defence personnel from the Kangaroo 89 series exercise, and when the withdrawal of those personnel is complete, then we will have additional RAF capacity available for civilian purposes. In some circumstances, people who would have been carried either by RAF flights or by civilian flights on a charter basis have been picked up by Qantas. But the fact of the matter is that the government assigns higher priority to the completion of the Kangaroo exercise than it does to the shifting of of civilian personnel around. There are aircraft to do both jobs. And then you get down to the question of pay and allowances. Erroneously, it is claimed that pay has not been reviewed. It has been reviewed repeatedly and consistently upgraded in accordance with government wage-fixing principles. And those wage-fixing principles have produced a massive lift in service allowances over the last couple of years, and most notably, given the nature of this particular issue, a 75% increase to a maximum of $11,000 a year in the flying allowance. Now, those service pilots are paid well. They are certainly not paid as well as their civilian counterparts, and 8 hours a week at the stick is an unknown figure to a Royal Australian Air Force pilot, and the fact that they are not flying 8 hours at the stick during the course of these particular weeks is no particular hardship to them. They are, however, flying considerably more hours than they would do so normally. They are doing it cheerfully. They are doing it under government directive, accepting the role that the Defence Forces always accept from the government in a democracy, that they act in accordance with government directives. To fail to accept that principle introduces a revolutionary element into the politics of this country. So not only are we in a situation where the opposition appears prepared to tacitly assume that it will accept such a revolutionary element in the context of this dispute, but again, yet another example of their total unwillingness to confront this issue. There is no policy really in the opposition as far as this is concerned. We've got the Chauncey Gardner of Australian politics leading the opposition here. He's the man who likes to watch. The man who likes to watch.
The honourable member for O'Connor. Order. The honourable member for O'Connor.
Yes, I asked the minister to withdraw that remark. Well, then, if it's permissible, he's fat.
Order. The honourable member for O'Connor will withdraw. Will resume his seat. The minister's remarks. The minister's remarks aren't out of order, but he should refer to members by their title or by their electorates. The honourable
Leader of the Opposition is the Chauncey Gardner of Australian
politics. The honourable minister won't compound the matter. The minister will answer the question.
Okay, I withdraw. Whatever the point. The point is the opposition leader is not leading on this particular issue. He is allowing this plethora of criticism to emerge from his front bench, implicitly and explicitly. And the question of handling what is clearly an absolutely critical issue to the future of the economy of this nation. And this example from Senator Jocelyn Newman is simply the latest of it.
The honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, my question is directed to the Prime Minister. Has the Prime Minister now reached an agreement with the domestic airlines to pay compensation for their losses resulting from the pilots dispute?
The honourable Prime Minister. The honourable member for Canning.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question without notice is directed to the Treasurer. Is the Treasurer aware of proposals that have recently been publicly canvassed to implement a two-rate personal income tax scale? Can the Treasurer advise the House on how such a scale could be implemented while also accommodating the objective of maintaining a tight fiscal policy?
Good question.
The honourable Treasurer.
Thought of it myself. The fact of the matter is that such a proposal could not be accommodated within current fiscal policy, and the budget saw the emergence of a bipartisan view about the fiscal stance when the Leader of the Opposition said in his budget reply, and I quote him, "The fiscal surplus this year is the right result," but he went on to say achieved the wrong way, but he's endorsing the surplus. And then in his speech under headed Fiscal and Monetary Policy, he says this: "The government has claimed a lot of credit for producing a $9.1 billion surplus this year. I'm not about to criticise that for the sake of criticism, but I've said that the surplus is the right result achieved the wrong way." So he's endorsed the government's fiscal policy, or the stance of fiscal policy. Now, Mr Speaker, to just add some information to the debate about this proposal which we've seen floated about a two-rate personal income tax scale, that is both by the opposition and other elements of the community, I've calculated how the present tax scale would have to be adapted to fulfil those conditions. That is, two rates only, the top rate no more than the company tax rate, plus I've assumed that nobody wants the existing tax bill to rise, so I've got that as a third condition. The lowest cost tax scale that could meet those three conditions would be to have the existing bottom rate of 21 cents running up to the existing 39 cent threshold, and then 39 cents applying to all higher incomes. That is the lowest cost tax scale that is A, flatter, B, two rates only, and C, increases the tax bill does not increase the tax bill for any taxpayer. And as you would expect, it would be a typical kind of Liberal-style tax cut. Nothing for lower income earners. Nobody earning $17,000 or less gets any tax cut at all. Very little for middle income earners, a flat $4.55 running up to $35,000, and a lot at the top. At $100,000 it gives $104 a week. So to sum it up, it's 55 cents a week for someone on 18,000, 55 cents a week for someone on 18,000, $55 a week for someone on 68,000 a year, and I table for the benefit of the House an actual rate scale, an income scale. Now, Mr. You'll notice the relevance of it all. Don't worry, Mr. Speaker. The cost of such a proposal would be $2.8 billion. $2.8 billion this financial year. The out-year cost would be significantly higher. So, Mr. Speaker, this was relevant when we consider that on the night of the Leader of the Opposition's budget reply, he said, and I'll quote him from Hansard, let us give them a scoop. First, we will move towards a flatter system of personal taxation that has only two marginal rates. Second, we will ensure that the top rate for for individuals is not higher than the company tax rate. So on national television, in the budget reply, the Leader of the Opposition committed the opposition parties to that kind of tax scale, a two-rate system with the company rate, the top personal rate, aligned to the company rate. And that commitment is a firm commitment given to the public of Australia. Since then, the Leader of the Opposition has used more obscure media performances to try and walk away from that commitment. On a radio station, he said he had a three-rate. He thought we'd need to maintain for some time a three-rate system. Then later in that week, he said a four-rate system. And apparently before lunch today, he's been sliding between 2 and 4 rates at a press conference. Now, that $2.8 billion, Mr Speaker, comes on top of the cost of abolishing the capital gains tax, abolishing the fringe benefits tax, providing tax bias for families and inflation adjustment of the tax system, which is supposed only to be funded by a $1 billion cut to government spending. A $1 billion cut to government spending is going to fund a $2.8 billion cost this financial year to that rate scale, the abolition of capital gains, the abolition of FBT and substantiation, of course, tax bias for family and inflation adjustment of the tax system. Now, Mr Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition said today in a couple of weeks he'll give us these tax details. This is about the 15th time we've been told at this parliament. He's told us he'll give it to us by October. He's got 30 days, practically, to give us that, to give the parliament and the public that tax scale. I'm going to do a pretty reasonable job of it, brother, I can tell you that. And Mr Speaker, will be interesting to see then how much the Leader of the Opposition includes in his figuring for his two-rate scale and his top-rate alignment to the company rate, the $2.8 billion, and whether that's the kind of tax scale which I published he could live with people at the bottom getting 55 cents and people at 65,000 getting $55, while at the same time he abolishes capital gains, the fringe benefits tax bias for families, and of course his much heralded inflation adjustment of the tax system, which he's been dissembling from since the day he, of course, first raised it.
The honourable member for McKellar.
Mr Speaker, my question without notice is to the Minister for Defence. What are the financial arrangements between the Department of Defence and the commercial airlines for the provision of Boeing 707 and other aircraft for the carriage of their passengers? Is the RAAF receiving from the airlines the full ticketed fare, or at least its full operating costs for the operation of the various aircraft?
The Minister for Defence.
An agreement has been reached between the airlines and the RAAF for the use of their aircraft. And I will give the honourable gentleman a more detailed answer, but from the top of my head, as I recollect it, when I dealt with it some time ago, the airlines are carrying the cost of directly of supplying the aircraft with fuel and with what they need to fly at the time that they fly, and there is an agreed rate in the area of maintenance for payment subsequently. The fares are being collected and the operation is being conducted by the airlines themselves, so there are a complex set of payment arrangements related to it. The assumption is that this is being conducted on a non-subsidised basis, but of course we have not had to do this before, and it is not at all inconceivable that we could find ourselves in a situation where there may be a gap between what is being paid for in maintenance and what is the actual cost of the aircraft flying in these sorts of circumstances. And if that is to occur, then I would go and address my colleagues on that subject in the course of additional estimates. However, that is not anticipated as the likely outcome. We believe that we have struck a reasonable deal with the airlines. But as I said, it will probably take some time and experience in the course of these operations to work out whether or not that is exactly as we anticipate. But I say the point that I make on this is that it is our objective to ensure that civilian personnel get uplifted. It is not our objective to make a profit out of the airlines or put the airlines in a situation in which they have difficulty in conducting their affairs. I think it's reasonable for me to ask the opposition, would they have an alternative view on that?
Order. The member for McKellar will cease interjecting. The member for Hughes.
Speaker, I address my question to the Prime Minister. I ask the Prime Minister pardon me, if he could inform the House of what action the government is taking in response to continuing human rights violations around the world.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I thank the honourable member for Hughes for this question, and one can truly say in this case, Mr Speaker, that it is well known in the House that the honourable member has a particular and continuing interest in this area of affairs. Mr Speaker, Australia is very active in making representations about human rights cases to foreign governments. The policy of the government in this respect is unqualified and it's non-discriminatory. We make representations to any country from which we have received confirmed reports of human rights abuses. Human rights reporting by our overseas posts and our close links with Australian human rights groups, including the parliamentary group of Amnesty International, enable us to respond promptly to human rights abuses, and I think it's a credit to this parliament that in this area of Amnesty International activities we have a thoroughgoing bipartisanship. Our immediate and unequivocal response to the tragic and deplorable events in China provides clear recent evidence of our commitment to this policy. And I should say, Mr Speaker, and I would hope here that, without any question, I'd have the full support of all parts of the House, where I say we've recently made representations to Bulgaria on its policies of forced assimilation and repression of ethnic Turks, which has led, Mr Speaker, to an exodus of some 250,000 of those unfortunate people to Turkey. And I can say, Mr Speaker, that we will continue to press our concerns to the Bulgarian authorities and to ask them to find a solution to the exodus which is satisfactory to all parties. We believe, Mr Speaker, that it's also very important to participate in multilateral forums in order to develop and promote internationally accepted standards of human rights. So, briefly, Mr Speaker, in answer to the honourable gentleman's question, I repeat, wherever we have confirmed reports of the abuse of human rights, wherever they occur, we make appropriate representations. I'm strengthened on the part of the government in being able to do that by the bipartisanship which does exist substantially in this area, and I repeat particularly in the most recent case of this tragedy that's happening in regard to the ethnic Turks that are being expelled from Bulgaria, that we have made and will continue to make very strong representations in that regard.
The Honourable Leader of the National Party.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question without notice is to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that the mixing of international and domestic passengers on trunk routes will not enable the transfer of items such as drugs between passengers in the cabin?
Order. Order.
Oh, just wait for the answer.
Order. The Minister for Industrial Relations. The Honourable Leader of the National Party.
As I said, will not enable the transfer of items such as drugs between passengers in the cabin and hence circumvent normal custom checks on exit.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I wonder when we are going to get to the bottom of the barrel with this mob opposite on this issue. I mean, we had, Mr Speaker, we had, first of all, the issue that we were playing around with the safety of passengers because of a particular firm that had been chartered in, where, of course, the fact is that the CIA, the independent body in this country responsible for handling these matters, made it clear that the charter in question satisfied the requirements of the Federal Aviation Authority in the United States and our own. So having tried that fear and smear proposition in regard to the safety of the chartered aircraft, we now get to the question of drugs. I wonder, Mr Speaker, when this pathetic mob opposite are going to stop dredging the barrel to find every conceivable argument they can to prop up and support the pilots. When are they going to stop?
Order.
When are they going to stop? They impugn the RAF and what they're doing as though they're being dragooned. They're not content with impugning our servicemen and women, in questioning the safety of the aircraft that are brought in. They're now into drugs. I give the same answer, Mr Speaker, in regard to this miserable collection of people opposite, this thoroughly miserable, discreditable mob opposite, that we have in this country competent, dedicated, arm's-length, independent authorities whose responsibility it is to discharge the laws and the regulations of this country, and I have the confidence that they will do so. For the sake of everything, Mr Speaker, which begins to be reasonable in this country, will those opposite stop this incredibly stupid proposition of trying to find every conceivable argument they can to say that this government should give up the fight because it's too hard, give up the fight against this group of people who are carrying out your industrial relations policy. It's fair enough in a sense that you want to defend them because they are carrying out your policy, but even with your limited sense of commitment to the interest of the nation, you would have thought that by now you'd reach the end of the road, or more appropriately, that you'd reach the bottom of the barrel. For God's sake, stop it.
The honourable member for Ipswich. Oxley, I should say.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And may I offer my congratulations on your appointment.
Order.
Mr Speaker, my question is addressed to the Minister for Prime Ministry and Energy. Is the Minister aware of a decision announced by the Queensland Government that the rail freight rates would be changed for new and big expansion of existing mines? What effect will this have on the coal industry in Queensland, and does he believe that these changes will help solve the problems in this area?
The Honourable Minister for Primary Industries and Energy.
Well, Mr Minister, I thank the honourable member for his question. The first point I would make is that I know that the honourable member is very worried about the mines in his own electorate, and I recently visited some of them with him. The second point, of course, is that this change in policy relates only to new mines and doesn't help existing mines in difficulty, particularly those in the West Moreton. But really what this is all about is a pre-election stunt by the corrupt, undemocratic, increasingly desperate National Party government in Queensland. I would have hoped that someone would have asked me a question about the Fitzgerald report. There's an enormous silence on the other side, and just as Ahern is stuck with that rotten, corrupt National Party government in Queensland, so is every National Party member in this House. Criminality, and this is the criminality from Joe and Hins. This is the man in '87, Joe for Prime Minister. And what happened? All the people on the right, not enough solidity, not enough principle, not enough policy on the other side of this House to resist that rotten old corrupt crook. And, well, maybe John Moore. All right, member for Ryan.
Order. The Minister will withdraw that remark.
I withdraw.
But,
you know, what this is all about is increasing desperation. Now, this is just a little bit of the way. What the Queensland government has always done has been a series of deals. They've never had any rational rail freights policy. You do a deal with this mining company, you do a deal with that mining company, and it got to the absurd situation such that new mines, any mine that wanted to open up, was faced with full costs because there's never any rational basis to their rail charging policy, because Queensland was run on nothing but a series of hillbilly deals. And the Liberal Party went along with that for most of the time of that coalition. And the National Party members in this House, particularly those from Queensland, stand condemned because for years and years and years that rotten corruption and nonsense was put up with by the Liberals, and the National Party members in this House see no evil, hear no evil, think no evil, and they all knew what was going on. Now this policy goes some way to getting a rational discussion on this whole issue of rail freights for the coal industry in Queensland, but it's nothing but a pre-election stunt. It doesn't help existing mines. It doesn't help the mines that the member for Oxley is fighting so hard for.
The honourable member for Flinders.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question.
Order. The honourable member for Flinders. The gentleman in the gallery will resume his seat. The attendant will remove the gentleman from the gallery. The honourable member for Flinders.
What are you going to say?
The member for Flinders will ask his question.
Thank you. Yes, my question is to.
I would like him to be upstaged by the gallery.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Yeah. In the light of the...
Now look, where's the security? Where's the security, Bob? Bob. Walk out.
Well, people, those people in the gallery who think that's funny have really made a big mistake on the way they think the government of their country and the parliament of their country should be run. And you should be ashamed of yourselves for complimenting someone who's done that. The honourable member for Flinders. The honourable, we might just hear the honourable member. Yep.
I believe it would be appropriate in such circumstances for that section of the gallery to be cleared. Quite frankly, unless order is restored to this House,
I'm not aware of who was clapping, but I'm sure they are, and they'll take note of what I said. The honourable member for Flinders.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In the light to the Prime Minister, in the light of the reported comments yesterday by Commissioner Payne that the Industrial Relations Commission still has jurisdiction in the airline dispute, does the Prime Minister stand by his statement of yesterday that it doesn't? And if not, will the government support the coalition sanctions legislation now before the Senate and to be reintroduced here today?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, what should understand is that the gentleman in question has offered a conciliation process. The facts are, of course, and it's what completely reveals the hopelessness and the irrelevance of the opposition's position, is that what you are faced with now as a result of the Airline Pilots Union following your policy, they are out of the system. They are out of the system, and they are no longer... would you listen and begin to understand? You're a lawyer. You would have thought that you could understand the simple fact. I did not... The pilots. I did not say the pilots' union. I said the pilots are out of the system. They are. The pilots in this dispute are out of the system. Don't you know that? They have resigned. Get your... Oh, look, Mr Speaker, can we have a bit of... Mr Speaker, can we have a bit of...
The honourable member for Flinders might listen to the answer rather than interjecting.
Now,
the honourable Prime Minister.
I said the pilots are out of the system. Correct. Also correct is that the union, not what I said the pilots, but the union is still a registered organisation. So if you do not yet know the distinction between pilots and their organisation, then you really are in the kindergarten era. Now, as far as the dispute is concerned, these pilots have resigned. You understand what they mean? They've resigned. They've said to their employer, we have resigned. I wonder if the lawyer understands what that means. It means that there is now no basis upon which, under the industrial relations policy, they can be dealt with within the system. Now, they are pretty elementary, kindergarten sort of lessons in industrial relations, and one would have thought that you might have begun to understand them, but really, you are all beyond hope in this matter. Why don't you get your silly prejudices out of the way? Your attempt to say we will try and defend these people who are practising our policy, knowing that they are embarked on the process of trying to wreck the economy. Why don't you understand the facts? Give up this business of safety, drugs, not understanding what the industrial relations system is about, and do what your leader tried to do before the rest of you ran over him and said, I support totally what the government is doing in this matter. Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
Speaker.
The honourable member for Hume.
Mr Speaker, I wish to put a question to you, and I